And joining me for today's topic, book critic Wendy Shields.
Always a pleasure. I heard about you and Ted. Heard what exactly?
Every 7 years, the itch comes over him. He gets restless, does something juvenile.
I'm not going home with you, Wendy.
Oh. Instead of buying a motorcycle, Daddy decided to give adultery a spin. Who is it?
Darwan Singh Tour for your driving lesson, please.
What happened?
We're moving.
That's good.
It's about time you started driving.
I used to have a husband who drove. Oh, Ted, where do they find these skanks?
They just like them young. You can mold them however they like, teach them tricks.
Teach yourself to see everything. The driver's biggest problem is everyone else. You can't always trust people to behave properly.
Ain't that the truth?
Wendy, what does a woman like for a gift?
I don't know. Candy? Flowers?
Kingsley.
Dadavan?
She's from a village near where I grew up. My sister picked her out for me.
Now that you're married, maybe a double date in Chinatown?
Cheeky. Tell me where you want to drive.
To go somewhere else. I'd like something to take my mind off my mind.
That's why I do yoga, meditate.
I do Ambien.
When a man marries a woman, they become one spirit.
I don't know what I believed about marriage, except that it would always be there. Why do you teach driving?
For a better job, I would have to take off my turban, shave off my beard. But this is how I know who I am.
Why did I ever think I could drive? I ignore everything and everybody around me.
I never learned to cook because I thought my mother would always be there to cook for me. Then there was half a world between us, so I make my own food.
Your point?
No point.
I'm learning to drive, you know?
Well, that's a scary thought.
Shut up!
I think it's time to discuss road rage.
It doesn't matter what is going on in your life out there. When you are at the wheel of a car, this is all there is. Your life, right now.
Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you. I'm a big fan of both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rumor has it, is there any truth to the fact that this was a project that the two of you had in mind after working together before? Like you had so much fun working together that you would wanted to do it again?
Yeah.
It was
Patricia,
a project I've been...
Patricia found the film.
It's a project I've been passionate about for a long time. It's based on a beautiful story I read in The New Yorker by Katha Pollitt. And it just stuck with me. And I stuck by it for many, many, many years. And then I worked with the great Sir Ben Kingsley in Elegy and got to know him well and realized he was the perfect man in all ways, but perfect for this part.
So you stuck with this for nine years, right?
Yeah. Woo.
Can you talk to me?
I was an ingenue when I had this.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about what it's like to be in the industry and sticking with a story for 9 years and what that process is?
Tenacity, courage, patience, and bourbon.
Sir Ben, did you know about this at all when the two of you worked together on Elegy or any time after? When did you get on board with this project?
There are colleagues that one meets and you realize that you have a perfect rhythm with them. Whenever Patricia and I were in Elegy together, it was a duet. And this screenplay is also a duet between two souls that live entirely separate lives in their own bubbles, and then the boundaries between them dissolve through friendship, and again you have another great duet. But it's really up to fate whether it brings you together with those actors or not. It's sometimes very regrettable when you leave a film set with that little pang, I may never work with that person again. Fortunately, we had a double treat, did we not, of not only working together, but with the same director who in the first place brought us together. I have my own production company with my wife. I do know that you can live with a project for a very long time before it comes to life. And aside from the bourbon, which my colleague mentioned, you do need to recognize that perfect pattern of human behavior that's locked in the story that you deeply want to share with an audience. Without that thorn in the side, you won't get anywhere. And I think the perfect duet, the patterns of human behavior that are explored in this screenplay, and the movie are so pure, so sound, so true, that it was a real delight to inhabit those characters. I actually don't think that there was...
we were just watching the trailer and we rather miss them, Wendy and Darwan.
We missed them. There wasn't, how can I put it, there's not a lot of acting gets in the way of our performances, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, the two of you are very fast with each other on screen, and you definitely embody these characters. What was it about Isabel that made you want to bring her to this story with the two of you, sort of getting the group back together rather than just the duet?
You know, Isabel is a purist. She is a brilliant mind, a beautiful director. She's not a Hollywood director at all. She's Spanish, although when you say to her she's Spanish, she goes, Catalan. She's Catalan. And she's emphatically Catalan. But that is her essence. She's powerful. And she is a woman who lived this story. She broke up a very long relationship and learned to drive at 48. She said, "This is my story. I am a Catalan woman, but this is my story." And so I love my imitation of Isabel.
It's a very good impersonation.
You're very good at Catalan accent.
She's gonna kill me, but I think, you know, Isabel, we had such an amazing experience with her shooting Elegy, and it's just, you know, she's the operator, she's the camera operator, so like Soderbergh is also, but she's right there in the scene with you, and I found that comforting, and I thought the intimacy of this movie was just right for Isabel.
Speaking of intimacy, when she is watching you through her own lens, she is seeing what the audience, what you will see, and also she has the most wonderful way of saying action and an even more spectacular way of saying cut. She says, cut. And often when she has enjoyed the scene, when it rings true for her, she will emerge from the eyepiece with tears in her eyes, and you know from that response, not only will that be in the film, that it will be in Isabel's film, and that's fine by me. If I'm in a film that's over which Isabel is in control, I'm very content, and so is Patricia.
When she slowly calls cut like that, is there footage of you guys like slowly turning to camera and she's like, cut?
There may be, yeah, I'm sure.
Is having worked together before and having worked with Isabel important going into a movie like this? Because I'd imagine you don't have much time to do rehearsals on a movie like this.
No time.
No time at all. So the three of you know how to work together already, a bit of a shorthand. The two of you, like you said, as soon as you started working together the first time, it just felt comfortable and like you weren't acting. So is that something that when you knew what your budget was, you knew what you were going to be shooting, what your schedule was, it was like, well, let's get the people that we can all work together the fastest.
I think it's trust. It really is deep trust.
Yeah.
Not only were we very vulnerable to one another in Elegy, but also we're very vulnerable to each other in learning to drive, because what happens inside the small space of that vehicle is that we share our vulnerabilities as characters. And in sharing those vulnerabilities and those fears and those defeats, Patricia's character emotionally and mine politically, I've lost my homeland, she loses her husband, and through those losses and those shared vulnerabilities and pains comes a joyful and beautiful friendship. Don't let me mislead you. This is a very
which
joyful
is what
and delightful
someone
film.
said to me recently, who saw an early screening, and she said, it's rare to see a movie about a real adult friendship, a beautiful, a chaste friendship, a friendship that really is about these two people become better souls, become better. In particular, Wendy. Wendy is a hardcore New Yorker. She's a fierce intellectual. She had everything she could ever want in her life. You know, my generation of women are lucky. My mother's generation, they sacrificed a lot so I could live this life of having work, child, family, partners, you know, whatever we want. The world is our oyster. And so this is a woman who has lived that. He has everything. But she forgot to realize that she has everything. And then she meets this incredibly...
Who's lost everything.
Who's lost everything. Yeah. But she meets this incredibly beautiful man, this devout warrior, this Sikh. And through this... But what happens is a true, beautiful friendship that evolves through their meeting. And it's what is something somewhat unusual for this film, in that, you know, it is it's a adult film about a true deep bond that happens with people, and there's no sex.
I think the bond comes alive on the screen because it's so perfectly balanced. It's balanced not because the people are alike, but it's balanced because they're very different. And it is that wonderful quest in life and in drama that we find this balance between almost opposites. People who had by accident I not found something in my car, his car, and approached the passenger, none of this would have happened. But then, does anything happen by accident? Is there no such thing as a coincidence? Was Wendy meant to leave something in the back of my cab in order for the friendship to progress? We never know. But these little...
But you know, New York is a truly serendipitous city, as we know. I mean, it's one of what I love most about it. It's, if I caught another train, if I had not been on this corner, if I had not been on the southeast corner of 48th, or if I had not been...
particular second. Extraordinary.
And I think every frame of this movie was shot in and about New York. Wherever we're driving, if I'm driving over the Queensboro Bridge.
Yes, you did that.
Yes, I really did that. I haven't driven in a long time.
Are you not actually that much of a driver?
Well, I used to be. I was born and raised in New Orleans, and my father taught me to drive. But then I became a New Yorker, and I lost my ability to drive. But I learned slowly through the course of shooting the movie. And it was life, and I mean, it really was a remarkable experience.
Are the two of you usually driving? Like, are you actually in a car? Or are you on like a flatbed, like you're normally shooting? Or are you mostly shooting?
No, we drove.
We drove. Oh, wow. We had maybe a flatbed once. Remember, this is an independent
You
film.
can tell that you're definitely, I mean, I got the sense that you were driving the whole time, because in most movies where people are on a flatbed, they have conversations in cars where they kind of are driving and then they look over and talk for like 15 seconds and then they look back like, that's not what you would do.
Although there is a scene where I do that and he's like, keep your eye on the road.
Yeah, that's why it makes sense. Someone's chastising you for that. When it comes to this film, one of the things that I loved about this was the approach to discussing or showcasing your character's heritage and traditions, and the fact that he is in this arranged marriage, and there's only a brief moment of judgment from your character, and then we see, like most relationships, like most marriage, it has problems that it has to work through. If you're a sensitive person, you're going to work through these problems. And I thought that was so beautiful, because rarely in films, especially Western films, do we see an approach to arranged marriage to be something so sensitive. It's usually quite judgmental, or like your character has that one brief moment.
But I think that brings me back to the balance that I was talking about, the dynamic between the two characters, the dynamic between the two actors, and also the cultural dynamic between people who would otherwise never have met and always lived in judgmental isolation. And because they are thrown together in the relatively tiny space of the car in which she learns to drive, and the cab in which I first meet her, that's a wonderful device. It takes place in a confined space. We do not have the luxury of walking across the room or leaving the room or leaving the car. We are sitting closer than this. I mean, we are seated together almost throughout the whole film. And it's that physical proximity.
Getting to know you.
That physical proximity that, again, is a magic ingredient in the cooking of this film.
Well, it's also ironic because it's the physical proximity of New York City as well, where you're constantly bumping into people of different cultures and just a lot of times not exchanging words, not having these relationships.
There is an inherent claustrophobia, a claustrophobic atmosphere in this film and in this car, in this world, and in our worlds. These worlds that, you know, are small worlds that come together. And I think, you know, we used the space. We had to, I mean, poor Isabel, we had to get very creative. Shooting in a car is brutal. It's a very difficult, a nightmare. It's the last thing you want. And so much of this movie takes place in that car, and we had to kind of embrace it and really accept it and understand it and just go with it.
How did you find yourself accepting it and understanding
Well,
what were things that you did?
quickly.
It's part of the story. I mean,
It's the story.
These people are thrown together physically in the confines of a vehicle. It's life and art. It's part of the story. But Patricia was also alluding to the certain claustrophobic aspects of urban living, particularly New York, the king of cities. And when I won't spoil anything, but when we go into the Sikh temple, there's suddenly space and order and dignity and calm. Ironically, the Sikh temple in the middle of Queens is like an island of peace.
How did you feel playing a Sikh? Is this the first time you've played a Sikh man on screen? Gandhi was not a Sikh, excuse me.
No, Gandhiji was Hindu, and Sikhism is a separate sect, a separate religion. But I'm glad you mentioned Gandhi, because while filming Gandhi, I did have a Sikh, Sardarji Gumar, who doubled as my bodyguard and driver. And after the most grueling scene of the film, I don't know whether any of you have seen Gandhi, but there's a funeral sequence, and I had to be on the back of that funeral wagon for 9 hours. And all my driver said as we drove away after a killingly exciting day was, "Well done, sir."
Really?
That's all he said. And I'll never forget the back of his head and the tilt of that turban as he said, "Well done, sir." And we drove back to the hotel. So part of my performance is homage to Sardarji Gumar.
That's such a beautiful recognition of like all of the work that you did, the gruelingness of it. Like, he probably doesn't want to talk to me right now. So well done, guy. Like, good work. It's unbelievable. So you shoot this film. You guys premiered. Where did you premiere the film?
Toronto.
Toronto.
Last year, we almost won Toronto with this film.
It's incredible how long it takes for a film to get distribution these days, right?
Well,
I mean, you make this film. And
they specifically held it. We could have released it last year.
This is the choice of our wonderful Broad Green.
Broad Green made the choice that they felt it was, first of all, they wanted to do it justice and do a big, put a lot of publicity and money behind it, which is we're thrilled about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a film that deserves it, yeah.
And so, and they just felt the summer was best. Summer into fall was best for this film, and so they held it. And I'm thrilled. I was doing Elephant Man also for this past year on Broadway and then in London.
In which she is absolutely magnificent.
Thank you so much. You're so sweet. Yes. No, it was, I'm being naked every night with Bradley Cooper. Somebody's got to do it, yes. But
You're lost now, yeah.
Yeah, now I'm lost. But no, I think they made the right decision to, they handled it with care and love, this film, which meant a lot to us. And
well, I imagine it meant a lot to you. 10 years in the making, right? Sorry, Serban, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. They took their time and very gracefully have arrived at some wonderful conclusions, and we're very happy.
Yeah.
When you get onto set for the film that a friend has ushered into making, and it's been 10 years for them, do you feel a lot of pressure there? Do you feel any pressure to do something specific for them or make sure that?
I understand the question, but I am absolutely dedicated to creating a portrait of a man that people can recognize and say, he is true, he is real, and I believe that this man has been or will be part of my life. That is my highest mandate. That obviously embraces the people who've put so much love into the film, but Patricia is so embracing and generous as a fellow actor that one didn't feel the slightest pressure at all, other than telling the truth of the man and the woman in the story.
One of the things that I love about the film is that when you think of New Yorkers, your character is such a New Yorker, and it's the New Yorker that we think of all the time, even though I would consider your character as well to be a New Yorker. It's just for some reason we always think of New Yorkers to be these urban book critic type people reading the New Yorker. But everybody's neurotic, whether you're a Sikh who's an immigrant or you're a book critic living in the West Village or Brooklyn Heights, I'm assuming your character lived. the city breeds a certain kind of neurosis.
But I think
It
that
does.
that in developing this friendship and listening to one another as human beings, our characters, that there can be islands away from the neurosis, little pockets of life in which the neurosis does not infect those pockets of life. And again, back to that little vehicle, that there was no. And when the neurosis did surface, we both characters have a way of neutralizing
but I
it,
do
calming
think
it.
the greatest gift that Darwan gives to Wendy is peace, is love and peace. It makes me almost want to cry because it's such a beautiful man, and I sometimes wish I had a Darwan in my life. First of all, to teach me to drive again, but to make me aware of others at all times, and I think that's it's the most important part of her journey in this film.
May I say that it's lovely to hear Patricia mention the words love and peace, but in addition to that, she knows, her character knows, and my character knows that love and peace is earned at a terrible cost. Because in cherishing love and peace, in the Punjab, in India, during the anti-Sikh purges and riots of quite recent years, my character lost members of his family. Members of his family were tortured and imprisoned. It's not a sentimental, and I know Patricia didn't mean it that way, but I'm just qualifying the fact that love and peace is hard-earned currency, and therefore an intelligent person in the car with him would see this is not sentimental. When he says love and peace, he means it. He knows what he's saying.
This is a man. This is such a formidable. Wendy, this fierce intellectual, thinks she's met everyone and knows everything, and she meets a true warrior, a true survivor, and she realizes all of the adversity she's struggling pales in comparison.
It's a context in which you see her.
That it helps her put her life in perspective.
It helps him put his life in perspective as well, Darwan. I mean, it speaks again to the claustrophobia breeds a certain kind of neurosis in this city, and when you finally sort of reach out beyond and create that island, as you were saying, you sort of find a different part of yourself, a different strength that you may not know you had before.
Yeah.
And you guys want to take some questions?
Oh, sure.
Very big fans of both of you. You've both played very diverse characters and very emotionally draining, probably. Comes to mind Sexy Beast, Station Agent, both in LG. Do those characters stick with you? Is that something you can just shake off when you go to the next role? Or is that something that really just clings to you, especially those really dramatic pieces?
We were saying behind the black curtain there, before we came on to greet you, we were watching the trailer. I think it's quite unusual for Patricia and I to say this to each other, but we miss those characters. We really do.
It was we did have a sentimental moment behind the black curtain.
Whether or not they stick with you permanently, I think that you do have to expand a little bit to contain the extremes of the character, and the roles you mentioned are perfect examples. But I think, honestly, that I shrink back to my original shape, to quote a law of physics. That if you move beyond the point of elasticity, it means you won't shrink back. And if I didn't have that capacity, ruthless though it may sound, I think I'd be in a very sorry state. I'd be a bit demented. But I am able to, because you're given an opportunity to give everything on set, you walk away with no unfinished business. And with this film, with Patricia and Isabel inviting me to give everything on set, every day I left, I felt that there was no... I don't mean that complacently. I mean that I was given a place to stand to do my job, and I did it to the best of my ability.
I concur. I think we have to enter at times such dark spaces as actors that if we do not have the capacity to find the light after that, it becomes, it's not healthy. So we have the mechanism to save ourselves after, so we can heal and move on. I mean, just doing The Elephant Man for 9 months of my life was brutal, and I remember I sent an email to a dear friend of mine. I said, I'll call you when I have words, because but I left everything on the stage. As Wendy, 10 years of my life, we did this, we move on. We sometimes have a longing for a character we've played, but we have to save ourselves, and we have to move on in a truly emotional way and a physical way. It has to be physical and emotional and intellectual.
Was this a different character for you in Learning to Drive than you've played before? Was that something that really interested you about it? Because I think in many ways you've played lots of different characters, but you're known a lot of times for playing these sort of open-minded, big-hearted, somewhat new agey women like 6 Feet Under, or she wasn't new agey, but The Mother and All the Real Girls, which is just an incredible film.
Wendy was more fierce than I am and far more intellectual. I wish I had the goods to be a book critic. I do not. I could review Charlotte's Web at best, and
I look forward to your Charlotte's Web review. I had to shift somewhat a little I had to make minor shifts, but there's quite a bit of me I had to also preserve, and I had to bring forth in Wendy, and just sadness and loneliness and loss, and that's with us. It's with me. It's just part of my life. It just always is part of any adult's life in some way. Next question.
Hi. Which quality of the other character do you think your character admired the most?
Good question.
I think that I would admire. I think Darvan admires Wendy's energy and drive and singularity as a liberated Western woman. It's a creature that he has very little acquaintance of, and I think that the completely liberated career woman is an aspect of her that he greatly admires. Of course, that career and that singularity, as Wendy herself says to Darvan, has cost her happiness. But if you wanted Darvan to isolate one thing, I think generously he would say her freedom as a woman.
Thank you. Even though it's the character. I think his stillness. I think it's rare for Wendy to be in a room where she's not taking all the oxygen out of it. And with Darwan, she had to breathe. She had to take a step back. She had to truly look. And she had to see what was truly in front of her eyes, which she had missed most of her married life. And through him, just his stillness and his beautiful turbans.
And matching tie.
Next question.
Hi. You've seen so much success on the stage and TV, big blockbuster films, as well as smaller independent films. And I'm just wondering if you could talk about, do you have a preference over one or the other right now, and maybe your approach to acting in those different media?
I don't think that if one is able to accept a script, I think that the disciplined approach to that portrait that I have to create is probably the same. And I do very much enjoy the movement between small independent film and large blockbuster. One feeds the other. One would not exist without the other. I would say that probably independent film is the seedbed of cinema, where great minds, writers, directors, DOPs, actors, are introduced to the world. And then, whatever happens to their fate after that introduction is up to the fates. But I think that independent film is a wonderful place to take steps outside of the box that is not entirely dependent upon wringing as much money out of the audience's pockets as possible, but more in the area of telling them a great story. And at the moment, I would say that independent film gravitates towards the latter, not the former.
I think I'm drawn to just the story. If it's a big blockbuster, yay. But if it's a small film, if it's a play, it doesn't really matter the medium for me. It's just if it's something that I'm passionate about, I want to do it.
Can you recall what the most challenging work you've done is, where you got to set and you were like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through this. This is going to be
I've
really
never
hard.
had that feeling.
Really?
I don't find acting challenging. I find it a total joy.
Right. Absolutely.
Wow.
And on to you, Patricia. Hopefully you do too.
No. I'm frightened always.
Oh, that too.
Yes, there have been moments when I've started a film or started this play where I thought, I don't know if I can do this. I honestly don't know. And it is through the process of why we act. It was through trust and imagination and courage and your fellow actors and character, investing in the character that all of that fades away. But no, I have big doubts often, but they fade. Thank God, they do.
They fade.
I think we're going to wrap it up, guys. Guys, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
It's been incredible talking. Congratulations on the film.